I learned how to make the stories of the Holocaust more poignant, more emotionally relevant for my students so that maybe they can have a deeper understanding of what actually happened, as well as a better way to integrate history into my lessons around the Holocaust.
And how can they apply that to today's society?
I think there's room every single day for empathy in our society. We have tendency to other folks, and that's not okay because it gets out of hand, as we can see.
So more than anything, it has been the reminder of how important it is to keep events like the Holocaust in its timeline, in its historical place, so that people don't think it comes out of nowhere as some supernatural evil. It is something that can be tracked, can be traced, can be learned from, and can be prevented.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
So the hill that I will die on, and that they have heard me say so many times before, is that we learn history so we do not repeat it, so that we can trace big ideas and big movements and just the shape of history, so that when you see it, you have the knowledge base to connect it and predict it. It gives you power over the narrative. I know what's happening. I don't believe what you are telling me. Here is the research I have that I know that I have power over, and the steps that have historically worked to intervene, giving power back to the students.
I really like the activity with the note cards and the dates on the wall, like making it more interactive for the students. So I think I'm definitely going to incorporate that.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
Because if we don't, then we run the risk of it happening again. And that's you've always heard the phrase, if you don't, those who don't learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So I want to make sure that my students, at the very least, know what could happen in these kind of situations.
Oh, definitely the event where we all got in a circle around the room and we had pulled one excerpt out of a reading, like one sentence out of a primary source. And she told us to close our eyes whenever that we went around the room. And I think that's one of the most powerful pieces of maybe lessons that I've ever learned. It was very powerful.
Why is it important that your students learn this history?
I think our students have grew up in a time where World War II is very distant from them, and they hear this, but they don't put a face to it. So I think teaching this allows them to see how groups of people were convinced things were necessary that weren't. And you have different political climates every so many years in government, and I think they need to realize some signs.
I've learned the powerful effect of visuals. Visuals also can put things in such a different perspective. And so a lot of times, because I'm an ELA teacher, a lot of times my kids are just saddled with all this writing and they're not able to connect it with the visuals of what's going on.
Why is it important that students learn the lessons of the Holocaust?
But as she said in the presentation, it's human history, it's human problems. And if you cannot relate to, okay, you're from a different culture than I am, you can at least relate to the fact that we're both human beings. And if your culture can go through this, I'm sure in my culture, we've seen some type of injustice.
I really liked that last word thing we did where everyone had a different passage that they read and they said a sentence that stuck out, and then we went through and picked one word. I thought that was really powerful, and I've already been thinking of resources and speeches and stuff we can look at and have the middle schoolers do that, because I think even for them that would be a powerful thing.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
Well, I'm a big advocate for learning history because we don't want it to be repeated. The event that we're talking about today is something horrific, and I'm very passionate about teaching the raw truth of it so that we don't treat people the way we once did or make the same mistakes.
What are the parallels to today's society?
Well, just looking at treatments of different groups and, I'm big on propaganda and how people are portrayed in the media and stuff, and making sure when that stuff when it comes out, we're able to recognize it and call it what it is and not, have those prejudices against different groups of people.
That telling personalized stories is the best way to create empathy with our students. And I think that's something that I can achieve, particularly with the books that we were given.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
I'm going to steal off Miss Fink's quote from one of the posters, that we need to talk about the relevance of the Holocaust to issues today, and more importantly, that it's always, always the appropriate thing to speak out against evil.
What are the parallels to today's society?
Marginalized groups that are not given the care and understanding to be full members of society. And so I think it's always an issue to look out for those that are, least fortunate, minority groups, whatever it might be.
I think the biggest takeaway I've gotten from this is just all of the children's perspective that have been affected, and all of the journal entries and the way that they found the strength to write through something that has, it was a traumatic experience. So for them to have the bravery to write about it, even if they didn't know that's what they were doing at the time, I think it's really important to preserve those historical accounts.
And how does this apply to today's society?
The vast majority of my students don't even know what the Holocaust is or understand how it happened and why it happened. And whenever we look at similar things that could be happening across the world, I think it's important for the kids to understand how the Holocaust could happen again if given the circumstances.
Today I've kind of learned the importance of contextualizing the history of something like the Holocaust to provide narratives leading into the events and after the events, and how that helps students put it in a frame of reference within their overall understanding of history.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
Something like the Holocaust is incredibly uncomfortable to learn for a lot of students, but it is important for them to understand that even when history and the truth is uncomfortable, that it's important to understand the history, that we live in a world where people are starting to question what the truth is. So events like this that people are beginning to question, it's important to understand the truth of the events.
It's been great so far. I've really enjoyed the way everything's being presented, imparting the value of teaching the Holocaust in a meaningful and insightful way. It's been good.
What message do you like to deliver to your students regarding the lessons of the Holocaust?
I would like them to understand that this is a historical event that could be repeated if we don't understand why it happened. And I think the best way to do that is to connect to the actual human stories involved in this.
So far, it's been pretty good. We've learned a lot of how to teach the Holocaust in a tactful way so far. So I'm excited to see what we have coming up as far as more of the specific content and that sort of thing.
What do you try to convey to your students on the issue of the Holocaust?
I think the important part there is to see how it came about and to see how they got to that point in Germany, in that country, and to see how to avoid that happening in the future.
What are the lessons for the students in today's society?
I think we can look at specific countries and groups and leaders and see how things are happening in specific areas that might correlate to how things started in Nazi Germany, and potentially try to help in that before it starts.
I think the practical examples of activities that they gave us is something I'm going to take back and use as soon as possible. So.
Why is it important that students learn this history?
We have to make sure that they are able to identify warning signs of eliminationism, warning signs of something like this happening again, and so that's one of my goals, is to try and make sure that students can think critically and understand when things like this could happen.